it's been open sourced. You see how they got to the answers, and what we're seeing is a much more efficient model, which I think is encouraging because that's going to bring so many new use cases to bear and new ways to do things, and it's going to be great for organizations and for users.
Yeah, I mean, so talking from my own experience as someone that uses a breadth of models constantly. I mean, I can tell you, I experimented a lot with V3, experimented a lot with R1, and R1 is really powerful, right? It's a pretty performant model. I would say it does not edge out O1, and it does not edge out the new Gemini thinking model, personally, from my experience, but it gets pretty darn close, right? And I think what makes it particularly compelling as a story is, having that permissive MIT license makes it, right in the hands of any enterprise that wants to pick it up and start experimenting with it. Now, obviously, to your point, organizations have to balance whether or not, we're not going to be talking about the geopolitical implications of the model, in this particular, podcast, but an organization is going to have to balance that. Whether or not they're going to want to POC something, that's going to be up to their own decisions. Obviously, you're going to want to, consider things like, if I'm going to POC, am I going to use data that, what data am I going to use? Or like, what are the considerations you're going to make on that, front? But the thing that it does, which I find, is very compelling about the story, is makes a lot of use cases a lot more within reach, because it puts a very, very powerful model in the hands of enterprises.
And I think the interesting thing here is, people are thinking we would hit a wall, we would hit a plateau. Elon Musk famously said that we've run out of data to train these models on. I would actually posit that there's a incredible source of data that hasn't been trained on in these models, and that's typically a company's data. And I think what you're seeing is, as we see these models get more and more commoditized, what you're going to see is that it's the business model and it's the data that will become the differentiators. And that's something you want to protect, obviously. So, I mean, it's really going to favor organizations developing their own models or leveraging these models and augmenting with their data and their business processes. But that's really exciting to see. And I think another group that it's going to probably win out of this is the ISVs, the software vendors. You're going to start seeing these folks have a very good understanding of a workflow, because they've basically built it into the product, and the data is typically a byproduct of that workflow, and so therefore it's very structured. They understand how it can be used.